So welcome. We've had an incredible conversation over the last 45 minutes about leadership, about skills, technology, augmented reality. At the end, the question is education still the key? I think we could wrap it up and say yes, because I can't imagine any of us here would not advocate for education. But I think the challenge to education is important to address. So Pradeep, I want to start with you, please. What do you see as the biggest challenge to education?
Thank you. So I think the biggest challenge is using the word education, because it's very nuanced. It starts with the K level, can go all the way to lifelong learning. So I think the real issue, K through 12, nobody would argue. It is the key, because technology, I believe, is going to drive the economy. Technology is going to create wealth for the next 30, 40, 50 years that I can see. So clearly, people need to be educated in more ways than one. Secondly, to live peacefully, we need a different type of education, which is awareness of other people's cultures, ethnicities, and I can go down and on. So I think all of these things are important. So the question is, in the US, the role of higher education. So people like me say higher education, being college education, research is really important, but there's a class of people who would disagree with that.
And higher education is being challenged because
Yes.
more and more voices are coming out and say you can be very successful, at least from a financial perspective, without ever thinking about university. How do universities deal with that, Pradeep?
So the universities like mine or all higher education in the US has problem dealing with it, but I think we need to understand that even in the US, only 35% of the US population has an undergraduate degree. Everybody else is only a high school graduate or maybe a community college graduate, right? So it's not as prevalent as you think it is. And this number has been a near constant for the last 40-some years, like a few years after World War II. This number has not budged much, even though people like me keep on talking about higher education being the key. Secondly, there is this notion that you need a 4-year degree to be successful. And I think that is being challenged because, I'll tell you a story. I was in a high school talking to this young student, and I said, what are you going to do when you graduate? He says, I'm going to be an underwater welder. I said, why would you do that? It turns out you get paid like hundreds of dollars an hour to be an underwater welder, more than you would get paid after 20 years of graduating from a good university. You know, so I think there's a whole lot of skilled opportunities there that people have forgotten, and people now look to 4-year degrees as the only way out, and I think that's a mistake. So we need to assume education in the broadest sense, and we need to have a multi-layer strategy, 4-year education, PhD, skilled workforce, associate degree, and I can go down the list. Yep.
Madhav, how do you approach that, especially when it comes to issues of research?
I think very interesting, a nice segue here. So education obviously has to, if you look at the future, has to be adaptive, it has to be inclusive and future ready. And to make that happen, it has to have components of innovation, support for entrepreneurship, and also now with the fact that Pradeep mentioned about technology, you need to bring in technology, but technology which is ethically embedded. Right? That's super critical. And at IIT Madras, I was just talking to them. We started this journey 10 years ago. So the future was 10 years back. We realized that running the regular bachelor's, master's was not good enough. There was a massive demand. I mean, India is a huge country, and as I think Pradeep just mentioned, so the demands are very different. You can't have everybody wanting to do the bachelor's or go on to a master's, but there are people who wanted to do short-term certification programs, skilling programs. So that is something we went into. And then we also brought in hybrid education, which is offline, online. Online took off exponentially. So we have a center for outreach and digital education. We also have, in partnership with Google, I was just mentioning to Alison that we are doing a program which will be in multiple languages, expecting to reach about 1 million learners over the next couple of years across the globe, right? And so I think, and inclusive is not restricted to a country is what we realized. So we have this Center of Outreach and Digital Education called CODE. We have now 10,000 international learners. We started this a couple of years back. The journey has been fantastic. Then quickly touching upon K-12, we realized that actually we are finding increasingly students who are in high school are super interested in learning more about the emerging technologies and also want to understand foundational engineering so that they know what to choose when they come out of the schools. So we are running a School Connect program. So we teach students, right now we have started with grade 10, but we're hopefully looking at probably a couple of grades earlier. We'll be teaching them cybersecurity, data science, AI, just for them a short-term program of 6 to 8 weeks.
And those partnerships, and Alison, I'll come to you on this issue of technology, partnering with Google, of course, Google Cloud, hugely important in enabling a lot of these technologies. But also the concerns that technology is a huge disruptor. And so for those institutions that are not quite strong or have the relationships or the financial resources, they get left behind. So how do you see AI or technology in a wider sense than AI as being an enabler, but also what do you do about the disruption element?
So at Google, we're very focused on partnering with teachers, partnering with institutions, and we want to make digital transformation available truly to everyone. So for students, we provide tools such as Google Workspace, which is like Docs, Sheets, Drive, and teachers use this as well. We work with universities to be able to provide research grants in other areas. But we also think of education more as a continuum. And actually, that's particularly important with AI right now. For example, we have a program called Grow with Google, where people can get certifications later in life. We can't assume that all of your education has to happen from K through 12 or even in college or grad school, especially with AI. So now it's important to do new types of certifications and training. Skills boost is what we call it, so that the AI technology that we have out there is truly available to everyone. And even for my own team, one of the core goals is around AI fluency. Because many people now, if we all know a few kids in college, they're quite fluent with AI because they've been using it, but we need to make sure that the continuing education is core as well.
Mm-hmm. And that continuing education, of course, is in the workforce, amongst the workforce, reskilling. We've all heard the statistics about how many jobs are going to be disrupted. But for younger children who are thinking about, them or their parents thinking about education, Kevin, I want to turn to you because, of course, as CEO of Generation Unlimited, part of that is thinking about all this education dynamic, but also with UNICEF, thinking about that younger generation. How do you see the partnerships between the public and the private sector in enabling solutions for all these challenges that we're mentioning?
So the partnerships are absolutely critical because the skills that are relevant in the future are the skills that industry needs. They're the demand side of the equation. The skilling, the TVET, the education systems are the supply side. If we can't connect the demand with the supply, if we're not training young people and children in the skills they're going to need for the future, then we're not going to be providing them with meaningful livelihoods going forward. Quickly on AI, because as we think about children, we put out a big report at the General Assembly late last year. As we look at AI, we really think about it as a kind of a K-shaped future. Right now, we're at the starting line, and if we think about the gains to productivity and efficiency for people who have AI fluency, they're extraordinary. But what does that mean for the countries in the global south, where there may not be access and there certainly won't be fluency? That means that all of the economic gains from AI are going to accrete to the global north, where young people have skills and access. So we're calling on the entire world to skill at scale, children and young people everywhere with these AI skills, because otherwise we're actually not going to see the democratization of opportunity. On the contrary, we're actually going to see a growing inequality divide.
And how do you get those AI skills?
Working with partners like Google. It's a perfect example. We work with some of Google's competitors too. But we actually just did a grant with Google.org. We signed it in December. And so what we're doing is empowering young women as AI entrepreneurs in rural communities around India, Bangladesh, and Nigeria. So we skill them up, then we give them the entrepreneurial mindsets that you talked about, and a little bit of seed funding to start businesses in the AI space. But we have to look to the experts for content. Industry is orders of magnitude ahead of where the education is, so we go to industry, ask them to give us the training material, and we ask to get that training material for free with things like Grow with Google. And we get it.
And in different languages, where the way we work with translation, because it's critical that everything isn't just English-based, or we have to make sure that we spend a lot of time with Gemini, our new AI tools, ensuring that the translation is really strong.
Dev, how do you see kind of that preparation stage? Because everybody has to upskill, but there's also concern about where do you begin? Where do you begin if you're not already involved?
So for us, we begin from day one, as soon as the student comes in, and we have multiple projects that are active. So we are looking at AI to replace or enhance instruction. So there's an AI model trained to be the teacher, to be the teacher's assistant, as in set up exam questions, analyze the exam questions. There's an AI model trained to be the student's TA, again, helping the student answer questions. There's an AI model that's trained for people like me. I have questions about policies of UC San Diego. I query this model. It's called Triton GPT, and it tells me what the relevant policies are that I need to follow on that issue. So we have customized that whole large-scale World Wide Web database to just UC San Diego needs, and it's working really well.
Madhav, I mean, how do you see that AI adoption? We've heard very tangible examples of having, be it ChatGPT or having the tone of voice of somebody who's a teaching assistant. How do you see that adoption of AI? And also, is there a challenge to those who may not have the resources to equip?
Interestingly, at the Institute, it's embraced from day one. Pretty much what all he covered, everything is pretty much part of the Institute. So we have the AI tutor, the AI mentor. So we have all of that. So it's embraced. We have a Center of Excellence for Data Science and AI. So at an Institute level, it's something that has not been a big issue. It's from day one. And it is increasingly, if you look at India, I think it is producing huge bunch of data scientists for the world today. So AI is what everybody talks about. But what we found was at an institute level, obviously getting into IIT Madras, it's got that the most competitive exam that you can think of. It's not easy, so creme de la creme of students come in. But there are obviously, as I mentioned, for inclusive growth, there are students across the country who want to learn. So we have come out with these short-term certification programs, which cuts across using AI ethically, applying AI. So these are programs that we've been able to carve out. And that's where, going back, the industry partnerships become super critical. So we have embraced industry partnerships, both at a national level and at a global level, and that's what has helped us to really become relevant. And what we're trying to do now, because we have an audience here, we're trying to take all of this global. So we have a full-fledged ecosystem cutting across research innovation that we want to take global.
Okay, on that note, and I do apologize, but we're out of time. I could have taken this conversation with this panel for another 2 hours, but sadly, this is a very fire starter conversation. Collaboration, industry partners, so the public-private partnership, but also thinking about lifelong learning and equipping it throughout the entire ecosystem. Thank you very much to our incredible panel, and do grab them and speak to them because they have a lot more to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.